So here we go. So as I said, I'm going to be talking about the Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times, which was one of the engagement programs we delivered for Making the Future, which is a big project that PRONI has been involved over the past 3.5 years. It's part of a larger Peace 4 funded project. It has 3 other partners. It's led by the Nerve Center, and we also work with the Lena Hall Library and the National Museums and I on the project. As I said, we've been around for 3.5 years, and this project was I think our 16th project for Making the Future. We went on to do 30 in the end. What Making the Future has been doing over the past few years is getting people to come to culture institutions like PRONI, the Lena Hall Library, and the museums to engage with their collections and to create responses from their engagement with their collections as much as possible. And as I said, it's coming to an end, sadly, next week. And this week we are celebrating the project and showcasing different things that were produced for our projects. This project, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times, was a little bit different from everything that we would have done before. Of course, the reason being, first of all, we didn't have access to the building, and also we didn't have access to the participants. We couldn't bring them into our building. We couldn't really go over to them as we would have done back in the past when we delivered lots of different projects, looking at different aspects of history. We experimented a lot with different types of technology like filmmaking, virtual reality, time capsule building, some sort of like arts and crafts projects as well. And of course, when the pandemic hit in March, we didn't have access to our own collections and we didn't have access to people. So a way around it was we thought like, okay, we're living at this very extraordinary time. So what can we do in terms of archiving this time? But more importantly, we really wanted to give people something positive to do, something that would get them to talk to other people if they were isolating by themselves, which was my case, but also so pick up the phone, get your family and your friends involved, but also engage with others as part of the group that we formed for this project. So that was Ordinary People, Extraordinary Time, which ran from April to June. It was so successful, the first call, that we, am I doing something wrong? No, I'm just going to maybe. All right. The choice of a live stream. I think I have for them, not for us. I think I just had to. There you go. Sorry, technology. Okay, now you can see it better. Yeah, so when we had the first call out for participants, it was so successful that we had to do the project twice again because we had a very long waiting list. We had about 20 people in each group. So the way that the project worked was, as I said, we wanted to engage both sort of like conversations between the project participants, but also very importantly, conversations that the participants would have with their kids, with their nephews and nieces, with their friends, with people that they knew as well. And as we went along, we realized that we were actually, in a way, documenting a lot, what was happening in Northern Ireland from a very sort of like everyday side of things, that in the end we ended up documenting that period. It wasn't the number one focus. The number one focus was to give people something positive to do, different activities that they could do each time with people that were connected in their lives. So we shared 6 activities with the participants: letter writing, scrapbook making. We asked them to look at their attic or shoeboxes and see what treasures they could find. We got them to think about a playlist as well with songs that were important to them, a bit of cooking. And we used 2 platforms to get that online engagement going, Zoom and Slack. So we met on Zoom at the start of the project and then at the end. And then we used Slack, which is sort of like a chat room platform that allowed the participants to keep that engagement happening whenever suited them. And also it was where they would share the images of the things that they were doing. And actually, just before we went online, we had an interesting conversation about sort of like the strengths and the limitations of Slack and Zoom, and how much we all felt that it would have been better if we had used Zoom a little bit more often than Slack. So again, a learning curve. So at the end of the project, after we worked with the 3 groups, we had over 800 images shared through Slack. And a lot of the things included sort of like family objects, letters, and photographs of what people were doing during the lockdown. And what we did after the project was we tried to put together an exhibition just to showcase some of the stuff that were collected. So if you go to ordinaryextraordinary2020.org, you can actually see a selection of the 800 items. We wouldn't share them all on the website because probably we wouldn't get people to look at everything. So there is just like just a selection of those. So what I'll do now is I'm going to share with you some of the things that were shared with us. And then, as I said, I strongly encourage you to take a look at the website because it is really good. So some of the home treasures, and actually some of you are in the room, so hope you're okay. A hair lock, which was inside a letter that Anne found from, yeah, and then it was really funny because we said that we were living through this pandemic, and then there was this envelope talking about the World United Against Malaria, so they were living through pandemic as well. And I think this is from 1963, around the 60s. So these are things that, you know, that people would find a child here. Lots of letters as well. So this one was a letter that she found, I think, from her niece, no, so the older daughter, to Ferry. She's very angry because to Ferry didn't come. So things like that as well. We had people also finding a dancing book and a covenant, sorry, an Irish dancing book and the covenant side by side. And again, and then the participant shared with us a story about the cross community marriage of her grandparents. And that was in a shoebox. We had a lovely doll by Wendy, and that very beautiful story about the doll, and how that doll connected her to her aunt as well, which was very beautiful. And it's funny enough, with some of the groups, we had like whole threads of dolls and teddy bears as well being shared. So sometimes when someone would share an image of this is my favorite doll, someone would go like, oh, this is mine. And then we ended up with like 10 images of dolls and different stories about why those dolls were important to them. And again, that's the beauty of engagement. Letters and scrapbooks. Again, we were living in this very kind of like digital time where digital was the way to connect people, but we really wanted people to step back in time a little bit and to get back to the habit of writing letters and putting together scrapbooks as well, documenting what was happening at the time. So it was absolutely wonderful to see people encouraging younger members of the family, like grandkids, nephews and nieces, to write a letter and to post the letter, to go through that whole process. Nowadays it's all through TikToks and Instagram stories, which is not as fun as actually reading a letter and looking at and the handwriting. So that was really, really sweet to see that exchange between the different generations. Very interesting as well. A lot of people wrote letters to future self, letters to my unborn grandchild. So again, it was very good to see how creative people got in terms of the only assignment was you have to write a letter and then off you go. You can do whatever you want. Scrapbooking, again, a lot of them as well, they tried to document a lot of the things that were happening in the first lockdown, again, hoping that probably that would be it. You know, little do we know that we'll still be here talking about lockdowns again. And there was one participant that she lived with other people who were all people from different countries who moved into Northern Ireland. And she actually, her whole scrapbook is about different words and the different things that her housemates were doing to keep busy as well. So again, it was very, very interesting to see the different levels of creativity and how different things were captured. And some of those scrapbooks, they then posted it to us. So we have the originals here with us, but others we have just the digital copies of the scrapbooks. But these are things that are great for future generations to look at in years to come. And because they really, really show you the everyday experiences of COVID more than any other official document would ever do. I love a good scrapbook. So playlists and recipes, again, these were tasks that we gave the participants, and the playlist, we left it very broad. So, you know, songs that have a meaning to you, and other people tried to play a little bit with the task. You know, one of the participants, she asked her children to do a playlist of her, the songs that remind them of her. And of course, we always had, you know, people saying like, oh, this is where my mother is crossed, or this is when she's giving out to me for not cleaning my room, and this is the song that reminds me of that. So it was really funny to see, again, the different ways that people that people approach, you know, a task, or like a lockdown playlist as well, the songs that you listen to get you through the lockdown. And cooking as well. It was great to see the participants baking and cooking and sharing photos of their food and their creations and some recipes too. So that was great. I think we all became professional bakers last year. Probably we all forgot how to do it at this stage. And we also, this wasn't a particularly one of the tasks, but it was something that sort of like followed naturally from all the tasks that we were assigning people that a lot of them shared their lockdown stories, what were they doing this morning, what were they doing last night. And it was great to see again the different ways that the pandemic impacted people. So we have from the very cheerful stories of, I'm sitting here at my garden, really enjoying the sunlight because the weather was great back then. But we also have some really tough stories of how COVID impacted people very negatively with, I lost my job and it was really tough. And it's been very tough financially. I lost someone I loved to COVID. So we have that range of, happy and sad stories, which shows that, COVID affected people in so many different ways. And yes, but as I said, if we're focusing on the more cheerful stories, the John Wick's exercises, the improvised home office, haircuts. I think we all had our haircuts, our hairs destroyed by someone during COVID. But as I said, these are just some of them. We had over 800 stories and photographs being shared with us. The website ordinaryextraordinary2020.org has a selection of some of these stories. And
so I'm going to talk to you guys just then a little bit about sort of what came off the back of the project Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times that you here in the room and some people online took part in. For PRONI, it gave us sort of like an idea to do something on a bigger scale with as many people as we could possibly reach across Northern Ireland. I say all the time, for as awful as COVID has been for so many reasons and on so many things, what it really did for us here was it was the perfect vehicle for us to really show people how important it is to document your own lives and your own experiences. We talk all the time about these sort of big events that will be of historical significance in the future, and then all of a sudden we found ourselves living through one. And it was the perfect vehicle for us to sort of explain to people about the importance of personal stories. So just a little bit about PRONI, just in case anybody isn't aware. But PRONI, we're here in the Titanic Quarter in Belfast right now. But there's sort of two things that define PRONI as an institution and that allow us to bring in records from people and allowed us to do this particular project that I'm going to talk about, Stay Home Memories. The first is how records are defined in our legislation. We were created under the Public Records Act in 1923, and you can see there it defines records in lots of different ways, but that legislation has always covered digital records for us as well. So we haven't had to update it to be able to bring in digital records from people. And our legislation also tells us who can deposit records with PRONI, and the answer to that is absolutely anyone. So we can bring in records from anybody about anything that relates to the heritage of Northern Ireland and its border counties. Lots of people know us as the official archive for Northern Ireland, and we are that, but we do take in privately deposited records as well. And when it came to the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that in 20 years' time, we will get the records from the government departments about their reaction to COVID, about funding streams, about support for businesses, reaction in the health service. All of that kind of stuff will come to us through the legislation that means that we bring in the records of our sort of core civil service departments. So we know we're going to get that. We don't have to worry about that. But we also know, working in here, that for most people, for many people, what they are most interested in about the past are everyday experiences, how their family lived, how people like them made it through particular events and periods in history. So we knew that we needed to capture sort of community experience of COVID-19, and the sooner we would do it, the better, because although we all think we'll never forget this and we'll never forget what it was like already, we've probably forgotten a little bit what it was like right back at lockdown 1, not imagining it would go on for as long as it has. So that's how PRONI is able to do this. So in June 2020, which, I mean, what year is it now? I don't know. But we launched this in June 2020, and it was called the Stay Home Memories Project. And it aimed to capture life and experiences during the pandemic in 3 different ways. So we issued a sort of lockdown or stay home census form, and we put it up on our website. We were on the news, we were on the internet asking people to go on and fill it in and tell us just a little bit about where you were living and what your status was like. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a minute. We asked for nominations to our web archive, because we were very well aware that lots of websites were popping up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So everything like social media pages for people who were sewing scrubs for nurses. I mean, I was following absolutely every page I could find that was who's delivering NI, so that I didn't have to always make my own dinner. there was lots of sites like that popping up in response to the pandemic, and we wanted to make sure that we could archive those as well. So we put a form up on our website, and you could nominate a website or a social media page to be archived. And as long as the social media page was open to the public, it can be archived here. And then we also asked for individual donations with a focus on diaries and photographs. So people's photographs of the lockdown and people's individual thoughts and feelings during the lockdown. So this was Stay Home Memories. I wonder will this play? There's no sound on this video, but so this is where it was, and this is PRONI website. And at the time, PRONI was completely closed to the public. And this is a video off my phone because I was at home doing this as well. So we launched Stay Home Memories in 2020. And as you can see here, there's just a little bit of information about what it is and why we did it. And I mentioned the Stay Home census form. So this is probably the thing that we got the biggest response to, was our Stay Home census form. And if you look at it here, this is what it looked like. And it sort of asks those traditional census questions. Who's all in the house? How are they related to one another? Where are you? What did you do for work? What age are you? But then we had really specific COVID questions. So did you lock down in your own house, or did you move in response to the lockdown to live with other family or support other people? What was your work status? Were you working from home? Were you a key worker? Were you on furlough? And then probably the most interesting one right at the end, describe the lockdown in one word. Now, we have had responses come into this stretching a year. So it was open from June 2020 until June 2021. And the words changed dramatically over time. But even in the initial sort of 100 that we got in the first period of this project being open, more than 60 different words were used to describe the lockdown, which really does show just how different it was for everyone. Everyone was experiencing it in a slightly different way. And again, I'll come back to that in a little minute. So that was a census form. Then we also did have people sending us in photographs, scrap paper, things like that. So you can see on the screen here, we have got an outdoor exercise class on a street. So that's everybody sort of socially distanced outside doing an exercise class together during the first lockdown. This is before masks were like readily available in the way that they are now, where there's you can buy them in every shop. Loads of people are making them. And that picture came in right at the start, and those people are just improvising with scarves and things around their faces. And this is a newspaper cutting from before it had really kicked off, just as there was the rumbling that there was something in China and maybe we should be concerned about it. We also had people send in poetry, and this is a little poem by a little girl, and she sent this in to us, and it's really beautiful. And obviously she was at home, and this is her view on the lockdown and the pandemic. I don't remember, does everybody remember getting this text on your phone from the government? I didn't realize the government could text your phone until this, but we all got this, that was it. We were on lockdown, you had to stay at home. But again, like I had sort of forgotten that we ever got a text off the government when lockdown started. But it's those kind of things that people sent in just to remind us what it was like. We did get a few copies of the letter from Boris Johnson as well that we all got through the door to tell us all to stay home. Because again, it's amazing how quickly you forget that you got those things or that those things even happened. I'm going to try and play this. I don't know if the sound will work. Let me see. I'll try to share it to Zoom. I don't know if you guys in the room will be able to hear it, but this is another little street, and they're doing can't really hear it. You're in the background, but it's that was people just trying to carry on with celebrations in whatever way they could during the lockdown. So they were all in their own gardens and driveways, playing the music out loud and sort of probably, I don't know, shouting across the garden to one another about VE Day. But it's all those kinds of things that have come in that even now I feel like they happened in some ways a lifetime ago and in some ways yesterday. And this situation has continued to be so uncertain that we have no idea when it's going to be over. But as I said, we did ask on our Stay Home census form, describe the lockdown in one word. And I'm sure if we ask people again about it now, the words would be different for them again. But this was in the initial lockdown period. And we asked them to describe the lockdown in one word. I will say the most popular word was boring. That came across the highest out of all of the words used was boring. And you could kind of see some particularly age groups, saying the same types of things. Young people in particularly found it boring. They were just bored and fed up of having to stay in the house and not being able to see their friends and not being able to do anything. They very much found it boring. Older age groups, there was much more diversity in what was happening, and I think that depends on people's own individual circumstances. Some people find it really peaceful and relaxing to have absolutely everything stop and just stay at home with their families, and that was a thing that we got from some people. You can see them there, relaxing, easy, slower. There was lots of people who found it quite nice initially to just have everything, all the stresses and strains of everyday life just drop away and to just stay at home. Other people who maybe had relatives who were more vulnerable or carrying responsibilities found it really scary and a worrying time. They were quite concerned about the impact of COVID and what it was going to do for people. Other people found it really frustrating, much more stressful to be at home with everybody at home all the time. It was completely really different for everyone. And I'm not sure, did I leave? Oh no, there's a swear word on there. There were lots of swear words on the lockdown census as well, particularly for those people that were finding it frustrating. You can see one on there, that was the most popular swear word for people to describe the lockdown that's on the screen. But yeah, as I said, some people find it a great chance to contemplate, to be with their families, to slow down, and other people find it very stressful, very worrying. And then probably, I'm sure everybody found it boring at some point in time when you couldn't leave the house. But as I said, it was important for us in PRONI to reach out sort of into everybody's home as much as we could. So we did get ourselves on the news so we could get right into your living room while you were watching the news, just to sort of put it out there that we can't tell the story of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in Northern Ireland without your help. PRONI cannot be an archive that represents all communities if communities don't get involved with us. And this was a great way for us to reach out. And as I said, I'm not saying that the COVID-19 pandemic was good, or that if I could go back and make it not happen, I wouldn't. I would. We don't want it to happen. But it was the perfect vehicle for us just to highlight how important your own individual stories were. And it very much come off the back of Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times. The main function of Ordinary People was for all of us to have some kind of connection with one another and to talk to each other and to get through it. But as we found the things that we were getting in from our participants, we were like, lots of people are going to be documenting their experiences, and the more that they can share them with us, the more we can share them with other people, and we'll have a fuller understanding of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic here in Northern Ireland. So the Stay Home Memories project, it is closed now. For the census is closed and the web archive nominations are closed. However, PRONI does always bring in records from anyone at any time. So if there is anyone in this room or anyone out there on Zoom that has material that relates to the pandemic in any way, you can always contact us if you would like to donate it to PRONI. Just because the Stay Home Memories project has now closed after a year doesn't mean that we would say, oh no, we don't want that. If you had something really, really interesting that came from the COVID-19 pandemic, we would still take it. So that is Stay Home Memories in a nutshell. And there is still bits of it on our website if you wanted to go and have a little bit more of a look at it. And eventually the whole archive will become available here in PRONI once we get everything together and everything organized. But that was very much what came off the back of our projects and just trying to archive COVID as best we could in the moment before we all forget what it was like.